And welcome along to another Call to Work webinar. We are delighted that you're here. If you're watching back on YouTube, remember, please leave a comment and subscribe below. We'd really appreciate that. It helps get this wonderful message out to more and more people. So please, we'd appreciate it if you do that. Look in the show notes below. Find us on YouTube, obviously, Instagram, LinkedIn, all that type of stuff. Our newsletter, we're out there trying to help folks find more jobs, do more things in the workplace where they are called to work. So we are delighted that you're here. I had a wonderful speaker here today, and I'm just going to give him a little bit of preamble, let him do his own intro. I came across Nick through a process actually. I was completely inexperienced in the charity space, and potentially some of you guys will be as well. But like as we see a kind of more and more of these opportunities came up, I sort of just took a bit of a punt on it, more to learn than anything else. And his approach and the way that he just really sort of sat me down and sort of say, look, these are some of the specifics required on this particular mission. And as I see more and more people looking for these types of roles, I thought it would be a really fascinating opportunity for him to share this message across a wider audience. So fortunately, he accepted, and now he's here, and he can't back out now because he's here. He's here on the call. So I'll let Nick introduce himself, and then he's going to crack on with his talk, and I'm really looking forward to it. So Nick, welcome aboard, and over to you.
Oh, great. Thank you so much, James, for that kind introduction. And it was great to meet you all that time back. And thank you so much for inviting me to come and speak today. Right, what I'm going to do is I'll share my screen. So hopefully that will all come up okay. Right, there we go. I'm hoping you can all see that.
We can see it, John. I mean, Nick, sorry.
Good, fantastic, brilliant, great. So today I am going to be speaking on landing a job in the Christian charity sector, and I appreciate as an audience you may all be at kind of different areas where in terms of you may have never applied for a charity sector role before, or you might already be in it. But I'm going to be covering areas which some areas might be quite obvious, and other areas I'm hoping to be really, really useful and helpful to you. And so what I'm going to be covering is I want you to help you to know where you can find Christian charity opportunities out there. I also want to help you create a clear roadmap for crafting applications that will actually get you noticed and that are actually relevant. And I want to be able to share what us recruiters and what hiring managers are really looking for when it comes to charity sector, but specifically within the Christian charity sector. And I think, within all of this, one of the key things just to kind of address and just to say right from the very beginning is that when it comes to applying for a role within the charity sector, it is quite a different process, or quite a different kind of areas that we're looking at compared to other sectors. It's not just about tweaking your CV and hoping for the best. It's actually you might need to completely rethink your approach to it. But ultimately, what I want to be able to help you do today is to be able to feel confident in your next steps, in what you're going to go about doing, and actually give you some practical tools that I hope be really useful for the next Christian charity sector role that you go about applying for. But my big hope is also that you just be feeling really encouraged and also equipped as well. And as a little bonus, what I'm going to do at the end is I'm going to be offering a free CV review to everyone that's attending today. I'll share more details about that at the end. So, a little bit about me, just in case you are interested. Now, I accidentally became a charity sector recruiter. It was not part of any grand career plan whatsoever. In fact, actually, I think most recruiters that I know, none of them ever intended on becoming a recruiter. It just kind of happened. And so for me, early in my career, my early 20s, my first proper job was with Christians Against Poverty. I was a centre manager of a debt centre. And later on became a CAP money coach, a CAP speaker, a regional evangelist for them. Basically, any job that I could do with them, I ended up doing. And whilst working for CAP, I was also working part-time for my church, initially as a pastoral assistant, and then later as an assistant pastor. And if you've ever worked in a church, or you've ever worked in a small debt centre, a bit like for CAP, then what you will know is it doesn't matter what your job title is. You end up being involved in everything. From event planning, volunteer coordination, pastoral care, setting up, clearing away, trying not to swear at the printer that is constantly breaking. You get involved in everything. And so now, after about a decade of this wonderfully chaotic life, I just kind of felt God's nudging me towards a new season. And being pretty good at finances, I thought to myself, well, perhaps I should become or look to become a financial advisor. So I joined this wealth management company and I joined kind of from the bottom up in the pursuit of becoming a financial advisor. But this is where God had a sense of humor. Because 3 months in, I was asked if I could help with a recruitment day. And being the ever eager and ever enthusiastic person that I am, I said, of course I can help. Anyhow, I had this person come and shadow me, this candidate, and at the end of the day, I was asked to give feedback on this candidate. So I did what I just assumed was expected. I wrote this massively detailed write-up about this candidate and why I actually didn't think they would be the right cultural fit for the company. Now, it turns out that I picked up on things that completely flew under the radar in their formal interviews. And the managers were so impressed with this level of feedback that they soon asked me to join the recruitment team for the company. And the funny thing is that I've never had recruitment in in my job title before, but all those years working for the church and working for CAP, I've been recruiting volunteers, and it basically become my unofficial recruitment training program. Anyhow, after couple of years of working at this company, COVID hit, and I was thinking and praying, and I think it was very much a God moment where I just suddenly felt really uncomfortable about being a part of this company. And it suddenly dawned on me that all I was doing was being part of a company that has helped wealthy people become even wealthier. And look, I know it was really obvious the fact that I'm part of a wealth management company that does that, but ultimately, I just suddenly thought to myself, I really need to get back into the charity sector. I need to actually do something that matters. So I then started applying for charity sector roles, full of confidence because I've got charity sector experience and I've got recruitment experience. What could go wrong? Turns out everything. I started sending applications and I was getting nowhere. Ghosting was happening all the time. For interviews I was getting through to, I saw quite a few unprofessional practices. And I kept thinking to myself, it really shouldn't be like this. Anyhow, I eventually landed this fixed term contract at the small local charity. And as that contract's come to an end, I then started applying for new charity sector roles. And the same thing was happening, ghosting, unprofessional practices. And I was just feeling more and more frustrated. I eventually secured a role with this fundraising platform that had really impressed me. But unfortunately, 9 months later, that company went insolvent and I was made redundant. So I was back in the job market for the third time in 2 years. But this time I had changed my approach. This time, rather than start applying for roles, I turned to LinkedIn. And for returning to LinkedIn, I completely revamped my LinkedIn profile. I created a video about my search for a new role. And within 24 hours, I had multiple inquiries. And one of them was with Charisma Charity Recruitment. Now, I've been with Charisma Charity Recruitment now for about 2.5 years, and seeing the other side of charity sector recruitment, I've learned so much. And I do generally believe that God allowed me to go through these frustrating experiences so I could help fix them ultimately. And I just really have this strong urging, this strong feeling that I don't want anybody to experience what I experienced when I was a candidate. And that's what I believe that God is calling me to do. So, that being a little bit about me, let's kind of jump into the Christian charity landscape. So, uh, there are so many wonderful, diverse, and incredible Christian charities out there. But I also realise, and it depends on the person, depends whether you looked at roles before, that actually sometimes people don't quite realise how many there are. Quite often, I think when people think of Christian charity, they might be thinking of church or a homeless charity. But actually, there's so much. And so the first thing which I would encourage doing when it comes to thinking of Christian charity roles is to think about what is it that you feel the biggest pull towards? What are the causes that you really care about? What are the causes that you feel God's prompting towards? Now, there's lots of great charities there. So you've got the relief and development charities. They could be things such as World Vision, Tear Fund, Opportunity International. I mean, if you ever want to tackle poverty or climate change or emergency relief, then that could be your calling. And with some of these roles, it might mean going off abroad to different countries, or it might also mean working in their head offices here in the UK. And they may not be quite as exotic locations. I'm thinking Milton Keynes or Swindon, but still, really important work. Then we've got the social action charities, Christians Against Poverty, helping people find freedom from debt and helping people to find work. You've got Trussell Trust fighting food poverty. You've got the different city missions in different cities around the UK, helping a wide range of vulnerable people, as well as the various churches on the front line, their communities. I mean, trust me, if you were going into one of these roles, you will never ever have a boring day. Then we've got the young people charities, so Kids Matter, Spurgeon's, Young Life International, Scripture Union. I mean, they're there to help support young people, to support families, to help them to thrive, but also to help show young people that there's much more to life than TikTok and Fortnite. Then we've got the healthcare charities, we've got the various Christian hospices, we've got Leprosy Mission International, Torch Trust for the Blind, to name just a few. And these charities, they're there combining medical expertise with spiritual care, helping some of the most vulnerable people. We then got the church support charities, and these are some of the unsung heroes. There they are, supporting church leaders and Christians and equipping Christian churches, regardless of different denominations. And so we've got London City Mission doing that very much with churches in and around London. We've got the various Bible colleges, Keswick Ministries, New Wine, Green Belt, Spring Harvest, just to name a few. Then we've got the evangelism charities, and that could be like Wycliffe Bible translators, helping to ensure the Bible's translated into every single language. Then we've got, again, London City Mission, Evangelical Alliance, Message Trust, getting scripture, well, helping to share scripture in creative ways to share the gospel with all people. And then, of course, we've got churches and cathedrals, from the small local church to the beautiful cathedrals, and there's all sorts of different types of roles that can be done within those workplaces. Now, with all of these charities, many of them will have a genuine occupational requirement to be a practicing Christian. And what they're looking for within that is someone who can, share the story as to how they came to know Jesus, but also is involved in a church. Now, within each of these charities, many of them will also have a statement of faith that we'll be asking employees to be able to agree to. Now, some of them are going to be, I suppose, quite open statements of faith. They could be like the Nicene Creed or the Apostles' Creed, or actually you could have a wide range of different Christians that could work for them, whether it's Catholic, Orthodox, Evangelical. And then there's others which are, I'd say, a bit more black and white. Actually, they're looking for a specific type of Christian who believes certain things. And ultimately, not all Christians will be able to agree with some of those statements of faith. And that's absolutely fine. But ultimately, it's just finding those Christian charities where actually you are on the same page as everybody there. Now, a big thing to consider when it comes to looking for a Christian charity is their size. Now, size, it really does matter. According to the Charity Commission website at the beginning of this month, there are 171,152 charities in the UK. Now, less than 1% of those charities are large charities. Now, when it comes to size of charities, it is based on the income, whereas in the private sector, it's based on employee number. But less than 1%, so it's just 1,630 charities, are large charities, are charities with an income of over 30 million, so over 10 million. And those are charities such as World Vision, Tear Fund, Christians Against Poverty, charities that are making an incredible difference, and they've got big structures in place that enable them to actually be able to do that. But then you've got the medium-sized charities, the 1 to 10 million range. That makes up just over 4%, which is 7,349 charities. And within those brackets, you've got those charities such as London City Mission, Evangelical Alliance, Keswick Ministries. These are professionally well-structured charities, but also at that size where you could probably have your voice easily heard, and where you can see that direct impact, and where you can really kind of make a significant difference there. But there's also this type of size as well, where actually, even if your job title is one thing, you might end up wearing multiple hats. And then you've got the charities under 1 million, small charities. And that makes up the majority of charities. That's 95% of charities are small charities. And so these are going to be your local Christian charities, most churches, city missions, and then more national charity wise, it could be Kids Matter, Aggies, Torch Trust for the Blind. And chances are, in a lot of those charities, it doesn't matter what your job title is, you will be wearing multiple hats. You will be the marketing person, the IT person, the event coordinator, and also the person that fixes the printer as well. And ultimately, in those charities, your resources will be more limited and salaries will be a lot less. And interestingly, over 75% of charities actually have an income of under 100,000. So if they do employ anyone, it's likely to be part-time and the salary won't be that great. But that all said, I'd say please don't write off any charity just based on size, because size really isn't everything. Just ask David when he faced Goliath. I've seen some incredible small charities out there who have got much more impressive structures and systems in place than some of the bigger ones. The reality, though, is from a salary basis, it really does depend on what you are looking for. So, for example, I might have a marketing professional come to me and say to me, look, I'm looking for a charity sector role paying £60,000 plus. And that's all well and good, but the reality is, it's only going to really be the large charities that less than 1% that will be able to afford that type of salary for that role. And so ultimately, it means they're going to have a much more limited options. Whereas if that same person said, well, actually, I'm looking for a role between 35 to 50,000, then actually, chances are they'll probably be able to fit into that 1 to 10 million size range of charities, which then will give them more options. And so I share all that just to be realistic, the fact that actually with charities, because they've got limited budgets, it is unfortunate they can't pay as well as other sectors. But actually, it's just being realistic as to what types of charities to look at and which ones could afford you. Now, with all of this, there are lots of different types of roles available, and I'm just going to very briefly touch on this because the reason I say that is it always interesting the conversations I have with people outside the sector. Funny enough, I was chatting to my roofer, so someone that's fixing my roof a few months back, and he asked me about what I did, and I said I recruit for different charities, and he said, "Oh, I didn't. So you recruit for charity shops then?" And he basically had the focus thinking that all charities and all charity workers were people that work in charity shops. So I had to share with him a bit more about everything else that goes on there. And ultimately, there are so many different types of jobs available in the charity sector. And so it's well worth considering in terms of your skill set, in terms of your experience, what types of roles could you fit into? You know, from the operation side, where there could be the finance, the HR professionals, the IT specialists, essentials that are ensuring a charity can run well, to the communication side, where there's all sorts of different types of communications where charities really benefit from people that can tell that charity story well, to the frontline delivery. I mean, yeah, project workers, support workers, counsellors, chaplains. I mean, if you're wanting a role that has hands-on impact, then definitely look at the frontline roles. You've got specialist roles, research policy, advocacy, safeguarding leads. Then the fundraising I think is really interesting because actually quite often when I pick people from outside the sector, they don't quite realise how many different types of fundraising roles there are. And I have to say to them, look, it isn't just kind of holding out a bucket in the rain, hoping people put money in. Actually, there's so much more to it. And I think especially for those in the private sector, where they can really benefit the charity sector is when it comes to corporate partnerships or business development roles, because actually for lots of businesses, they need to fulfill their corporate social responsibility. So as a charity, you go, look, we can help you fulfill that and find different ways to partner, which is great for them and great for the charity. And then there's of course, trusts and grants, which if you're a great writer, that could be a route you go down. Philanthropy giving, connecting with high net worth individuals, all sorts. And then we've got leadership roles, the people that steer the charity, who make these strategic decisions. And then the last position I wanted to share, and just something I just really encourage you just to think about and to consider, and that's becoming a trustee. Now, this isn't something I would encourage everyone to consider, regardless of your experience and regardless of your age. I mean, I'd encourage people from fresh from in their early 20s onwards to definitely consider becoming a trustee because actually charities can really benefit from a wide range of experience. Now, this is a voluntary position which you are helping to lead that charity and helping to decide how it runs. I personally am a trustee of a very small children's charity called Our Streets, Our Children. And being a trustee often involves a quarterly meeting all together as trustees. And then I'd say, well, for myself, it's normally about 6 to 8 hours a month I give to the charity. But at the same time, I think about that and I think, well, I'd probably spend far more time actually scrolling social media. But actually, with the trustee role, I'm actually able to help make a difference. And the thing I'd say with all that is you learn so much about the charity sector when you're a trustee, and you learn so much about how different decisions have to be made, and you generally work with other trustees, and you're having to make really work together to plan effectively how you can support that charity. And so I'd really encourage you to do that. Also, I'd say it looks quite good in your CV. I know many charities are impressed when they see candidates come through that have got trustee positions on there because it also gives those people that awareness of how other charities run, which can be really, really useful. But ultimately, regardless of where you're coming from, chances are is that you're going to have transferable skills that can be really relevant to lots of different charity roles. So it's well worth thinking about how can those transferable roles fit, those transferable skills fit different roles. So where can you find some of these wonderful Christian charities? Well, there are various places to look. Now, I'd say it does actually often come down to how much a charity can afford when it comes to a recruitment campaign process. And the spoiler alert is most charities aren't exactly swimming in much money when it comes to recruitment budgets. But ultimately, where you can search and find charity roles is first of all specialist recruiters. So a bit like us at Charisma Charity Recruitment, and we recruit for a wide range of different Christian charities, from kind of small local ones to much more larger international ones. Then there's other Christian recruiters out there as well, Christian Jobs being one. Then we've got Carnelian Search and Macaulay Search. And Carnelian Search and Macaulay Search, they're very much at that executive level type of roles, as well as trustees. And you might think to yourself, why am I naming our competition? And the reason is I generally would like you to find the right role, but also on top of that, all us Christian recruitment consultancies, we all talk to one another. We all got good relationships with each other. We quite often have done referrals to each other as well. So it's all good on that end. Other places you can find Christian charity jobs is on the various job boards. So I would say charity job, that, if you've not heard of it, it is the number one job board. It's basically the Amazon of charity job hunting. All recruitment consultancies are going to advertise in there. Lots of charities will. We know it's the place that most people know about, hence why we advertise there. And what you can do is you can filter through to have faith-based roles if that is what you are searching for. So other job boards as well. So Guardian Jobs, that's much more, I'd say, more the leadership type of roles are likely to go on there. Generally because it's quite expensive to advertise in Guardian, hence it being the more leader level roles. Then we've got third sector, and then there's the various Christian job boards. So on there again, you've got Christian Jobs, Global Connections, Premier, Oscar, just to name a few. Then we've got the generic job boards. So that could be Indeed, Reed, Total Jobs. I mean, I suppose the slight problem with that is you're probably going to have to go for about 47 unrelated jobs before finding that one charity role. But ultimately, yeah, you might be able to find some charity jobs on there. But I think if you're going to look anywhere, initially start with charity job. And I'd say if there's a charity that's got an income of less than 200,000, chances are is they won't be using any job boards because of the costs. And so if there's charities that are kind of that size and you know and you've got a heart towards, I would encourage you just following their social media pages and looking at their website occasionally, because chances are those are going to be the two key areas they're going to advertise their roles. And then the last thing I share is LinkedIn. Now, LinkedIn, it is the game changer nowadays when it comes to recruitment. I would encourage you to all be on LinkedIn if you're not already. And I would also encourage you to make sure that your profile is up to date. So please don't have an old profile picture from 2015, because the sad reality is that we are all probably looking quite different from 10 years ago. Make sure you've got an up-to-date job title on there. Make sure you've got your skills on there as well. And the reality is LinkedIn is the place where all us recruiters spend far too much time. It's our main place where we go to headhunt ultimately. So yeah, do make sure you've got an active profile on there. Look, there's a lot I could share on LinkedIn, and I could probably do a whole session on that in itself. But rather than go into lots of detail for that, what I will say is with me finding my role at Charisma through that 2.5 years ago, what I did last year is I wrote an article on 10 profile tips if you are actively job hunting. And yeah, I'd encourage having a read through that, because there may be things in there that would be really helpful when it comes to your LinkedIn profile. So please do feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. If you go to the featured section on my LinkedIn profile, you'll see that article there, and hopefully that can be really helpful for you. So let me share with you some pre-application tips. Now, let's imagine you've gone to the job board, you've found a role that really excites you. Now, before you just leap straight into applying, one thing I really want to just to highlight and get out there is that in the charity sector, cause alignment is so important. It's something that charities really want to hear about. And so what I would really encourage doing is, before you jump straight into writing an application, do some research. Look at the website, charity website, look at the charity commission page, look at their social media pages, find out more about their mission and their values, see what recent news they have, see what their challenges could be, see what their financial situation could be. Really try and get to grips as to who they are and whether they're an organization that you want to be a part of. Because remember, it is two-way. You've got to make sure it's right for you as well. And then the other thing I'd suggest doing, and I really would encourage this, and that would be to have an initial chat. So With initial chats, for us at Charisma, we always offer them for all of our roles. So if someone's interested in it, we say, let's have a 15-minute chat, and they can ask any questions that they want about the role as they consider whether to apply. And I'd say if you see a role that's interested you, if there's a recruitment consultancy, just go straight to them. If it's a charity doing it direct, go to the charity, even if they advertise it or not. The reality is that I think most charities are really open to having those chats, even if they're not advertising that. And what a good recruitment consultant will do is in that chat, if you haven't quite got the skill set they're looking for, or if there's other applications that would be much stronger than yours, they will tell you there and then, and I do this quite often, actually, it's not going to be worth your time in applying for this role. That way, it saved you a load of time. But on other occasions, I'll be strongly encouraging people to go, look, you've got lots of skills that the charity's looking for here. I would strongly encourage you to apply. And I think if someone's been saying that to you, there's a good chance you're going to get through to the interview stage. And it makes a big difference there. And it's that thing about that networking, getting your name known. Because if a charity's encouraging you to apply or you've had that bit of a chat, when your application then comes in, they're going to recognize your name. And chances are they're going to have a good look at your application. Now, when it comes to your application, I would say that your supporting statement that is the heart of your application. I'd say in the charity sector that actually your supporting statement is far more important than your CV. Now, I know that's not the case in other sectors where quite often it's this a second thought, whereas actually it's so important in the charity sector because your supporting statement is your chance to show why you really care about the charity and how you meet the person specification. Now, when it comes to a good supporting statement, I would encourage dedicating 500 to 1,000 words to it. I know that sounds like a lot, up to 2 pages, but it is definitely worth it. And no, please don't let ChatGPT write it for you. But ultimately, with it, you want to dedicate 200 to 300 words to answering the question why. Why this charity? Why this cause? Why this particular role? Give answers that go beyond what's listed in the job description. Give answers that goes beyond what's on the homepage of the website. Show you've done some research, what you found out, and why you feel particularly passionate about the role. And then for the other 2/3, answer the question how. How is it that you meet the person's specification? Go through the person's specification, and I would just encourage giving an example. Ideally, if it's quantifiable, then that's great, as to how you meet that person's specification. And if there's any areas you don't quite meet, well, what transferable skills do you have that would relate to that personal specification? Basically, do all the brain work for the person reading it so they can see how it is that you fit that role. But and when it comes to it, if there's lots of points for the person specification, you might have to just pick a few out because please don't go over 2 pages. It's unlikely your supporting statement will be fully read if you do go over 2 pages. I think the record that I've had is I had someone once write a 26-page supporting statement, and I didn't read it all. So yeah, keep it to 2 pages. And then the last thing to say on that is if you're applying for a Christian role, and especially if they're asking for that genuine occupational requirement to be a practicing Christian, then share a little bit about your faith and a little bit about your church involvement, just so they see that you meet that criteria. So you then got the CV. Now, with your CV, you want to write one that will ultimately get you notice. And actually, what I should have said at the start, and I'll certainly say now, is all the advice I'm giving here. This is all charity sector related. So other sectors are going to advise other things. But ultimately, through my work, I see a lot of CVs. Now, some are absolutely beautiful to read, and others are pretty painful to read. Now, the reality is that your CV, it's the shop window to you. It's often the first thing people open up when it comes to your application. And so making that good impression really does matter. So what I first thing of all kind of encourage doing is to try and keep it to 2 pages. Ultimately, if it's more than that, chances are people aren't going to fully read it. It's just meant to be a snapshot summary of you, your experience, your achievements, and then the supporting statement is there to then go into more detail. When it comes to your contact details, share your email, share your phone number, share the area you live in. I'd probably avoid putting your full address on there. And then if you're on LinkedIn, share your LinkedIn URL. I'd really encourage doing that because actually chances are it's most recruiters and hiring managers are going to try and look for you on LinkedIn anyway. You might as well just make it easy for them to find you. But then don't put other details in. I sometimes have CVs coming through with protected characteristics from nationality, date of birth, marital status. And I'm sorry to say that it's probably unlikely that we're going to be sending you a birthday card. And Telling me that you're married doesn't necessarily tell me if you're any good at writing grants. So ultimately, don't put those protected characteristics on there. And then you've got your professional summary. So if you haven't already got one, I'd certainly encourage doing that, a short summary about you. So I'd say ideally between 50 to 80 words. And what you want to do, let's imagine you're a marketing professional. Start by saying marketing professional with 15 years experience or however many years it is. Ultimately, you want to show that expertise there that you've got in that. But then if you're applying for charity sector roles, and especially if this is the first time you're applying for charity sector roles, I would encourage putting something along the lines of looking to transition into the charity sector so that I can make a positive difference in the world or something along those lines. Because ultimately what you want to do is if you've got a CV coming in and it is very private sector or public sector focused, then the charity might straight away be going wondering, is this CV meant for this role? You know, are they just applying for any job? Whereas if you put that straight into your professional summary, and straight away they can see, oh, this person's intentionally intending to apply for a charity sector role. Now, when it comes to your professional experience, what you want to do is to list the job title, organisation name, the month and year you started, and the month and the year that you ended. And then you want to have, I'd say, 3 to 5 bullet points per job role. Now, what I'm going to do is show you 2 examples of different ways people, I suppose, would write what they do in their job role. And I want to, well, you can hopefully see the difference between the two. So the first one here is you've got example 1. Developed and delivered a communication strategy producing content across digital channels. Now, that's all well and good. That tells you what someone did there, but it limits it. It's very limited. Whereas the second example there, very similar, it adds a bit more. Developed and delivered a communication strategy that increased engagement across digital channels by 36% in the first year, resulting in increased sales of over 20% and earning recognition from the CEO. Can you see the difference there? What we want to be able to see is the impact that you make. So many CVs, I see people just telling me basically what looks like a job description as to what they did in their job, but it doesn't tell me if they're any good. Whereas as you can see in that second example there, having some quantifiable results, it really makes a big difference where you go, oh wow, this person's actually really good at their job. And the other thing you've hopefully seen there as well is actually those numbers, I put them in bold. So whether it's a financial amount or percentage, put it in bold because the reality is that with most CVs, recruiters are skim reading. And so actually, if anything's in bold, that's going to catch the eye. And if they see your numbers, then that subliminal message that the person's getting is that this person's achieving, achieving, achieving. And that is a brilliant message to be able to get across to someone as they review your CV. Obviously, make sure you are completely honest. And if you're not quite sure of an amount, I'd say go with the lower percentage. So, for example, I'd then say if it's you could be 22%, 23%, then you could just put something like over 20%, like in that example there. But ultimately, yeah, do that. And then the other thing to put in your CV, if you haven't already got it on there, and I'd say put this after your professional section, and that would be a volunteering section. Charities love seeing when people are volunteering when they're doing things outside of their work life. And so with that, again, a bit like the professional summary section, put what the volunteering job title was, the organisation, the dates that you started and when you ended there, and maybe up to 1 bullet point about what you did and what you achieved in that role. Because actually anything, especially if you're coming from the private sector, anything that shows you've got a bit of understanding over the charity sector will really help your application. And then when it comes to the qualifications section, just keep it really brief. I am seeing more and more charities nowadays actually not remove the requirement for qualifications or just keeping it really basic now they are. So I suppose with that, I'll just encourage when it comes to GCSEs, we don't need to have every single GCSE listed. Maybe just put 8 GCSEs from D to A or whatever it was that you got there. When it comes to university role degrees, again, just put the degree, the university and the dates and leave it at that. And if there's any things that you've done which aren't relevant, so quite often I see people put lots of courses on there, unless it's relevant to the role, don't put it there. So for example, when people put their level 2 food hygiene course in there, I am there thinking to myself, well, how is that relevant to your marketing role that you are applying for? So make sure it is relevant. And then the other thing just to mention as well, and again, I probably see this in about half of the applications that I get come across, is when people put references available upon request. It's not needed on your CV. Ultimately, it's a bit like saying, I will attend the interview if invited. Ultimately, we assume that it's a given. You don't need to put that on there. So let's imagine you've done your application, you sent for your CV, you sent for a brilliant supporting statement, and then you got the good news that they are going to invite you to an interview. Congratulations. So, what should you expect, and how can you go about ensuring success or helping to ensure success at this interview? Well, when it comes to Christian charity sector interviews, I think they're assessing three key areas. First of all, is cultural fit. Will you thrive in their environment? Would you be able to get on with the team and work effectively with them? They're looking at your skills and experience. Can you actually do the job? And then the third thing, and I think this is very distinct for Christian charities, is it's the calling. Many Christian charities, they are going to be spending a long time praying about this whole process, praying for the right person. And so they're going to be really wanting to see, is this somewhere where God can use your skills and gifts and talents for his glory? Now, all three matter, but that last one, that calling, I think it really is what separates Christian charities from other charities. So when it comes to your interview, you're going to be asked various questions. And the one question I guarantee you will be asked is the why us question. Why are you wanting to join our organization? And within that, I would really encourage giving a decent answer to that because actually this is where the cause alignment is really wanted to be seen by a charity. So I would say have at least three main reasons as to why you're interested in the role and why you're interested in the charity. Now, a bit like with your supporting statement, go beyond the candidate pack. Go beyond the homepage of the website. Maybe watch a few videos about the charity, read the annual reports, and find some three unique things there that really excite you, that make you feel passionate about the role, but also shows that you've done your research. And then when it comes to the other questions, a bit like with the supporting statement, their chances are they're going to be on the person's specification, where they're going to look at your skills and your experience. And so again, I'd be thinking about examples for each person's specification point. So in that way, when they ask you a question on that, you've got a specific example you can give, and ideally you can give quantifiable results of that. That will be helpful. And then in a Christian charity sector interview, chances are you'll be asked some faith questions. Now, chances are the questions you could be asked is how it is that you came to know Jesus, sharing a little bit about your testimony. You could be asked about how your faith motivates your work. You could be asked about how you work with people of different beliefs. And I think especially if you're going to go for an evangelistic Christian charity, chances are you're going to be asked a question on how you might explain the gospel. So just be prepared for those Christian questions that's there. And then chances are as well in the interviews that if it's a Christian one, there will be time of prayer. And this could be praying at the start, could be praying at the end, it could be praying both at the start and at the end. And I know for some Christian charities, they will ask the candidates to pray as well. Now, this isn't to test you or anything like that at all. It's simply the Christian charities wanted us to spend that time in prayer with everyone to make sure that this all feels right and this is kind of God's direction towards. Now, when it comes to your answers for the questions, I think this is a really key thing. Quite often, this is when I come to give feedback to candidates that haven't got roles. It's either for giving answers that are far, far too long or far, far too short. One of the first questions I always ask in an interview is, how did you hear about the role? We always like to see which of our marketing actually worked. And I have had people before give 10-minute answers. And it's one of those things where often they will kind of answer the question, then they go on to talk about themselves and about maybe why they're interested in the charity. And so in some of those cases, they're answering questions I'm going to be asking anyway. But more often than not, I have to interrupt people so I can then move them on. Whereas other people will give such short answers, I'm there really having to probe and try and get a bit more detail out to them to see if they can actually do the role. So it's that kind of Goldilocks principle, not too long, not too short, but just right. And I think a general good rule of thumb is if it's a question where an example needs to be given, you want to limit your answer to 3 minutes. So ideally between that 2 to 3 minute range. And one of the things that you can do as you can say to the interviewer, look, have I answered, given you enough detail to that answer there? Would you like me to provide another example? Give that interviewer the chance to be able to say, speak more or to move on to the next stage. And then the last thing I'd encourage on the kind of the interview side of things is to make sure you have questions to ask. Um, with any charity interview, it's always got to be two-way. You've got to make sure it's right for you as well. And having good questions really does impress charities. I was interviewing someone earlier this week, and one of the things that really impressed me about them is actually they had about 7 or 8 questions at the end, and it showed that they really thought through the role and they'd done some research and just wanting to know different bits and pieces. And look, I'm not saying having 7 or 8 questions because actually chances are you probably won't have the time to ask all of them. But I think at least try and have at least two, if not three, good quality questions that have really shown that you've done your research and shows your enthusiasm over the role. And questions that you could ask are things such as, what's your biggest challenge at the moment as a charity? What does success look like in the first 6 to 12 months? Can you tell me a bit more about the team? What Christian practices do you do together? What do you personally think is the best thing about working here? Which I've always think is quite a nice thing to ask. It gives the chance of the interviewer to then to talk and to share, and often there's a big smile on their face. They talk positively about the charity that they are a part of. Now, I'm going to share a few practical interview tips, and that is the virtual interview hack. So ultimately, if your interview is via Teams or Zoom or Google Meet, then you've got an amazing advantage because you've got the wall behind you. And on that wall, I would encourage having pieces of paper stuck up or post-it notes stuck up with possible answers that you could give. You could be listing there the various reasons you want to work for the charity. You could be listing possible examples, quantifiable results, anything that you might need. When I've gone for virtual interviews before, my walls have been covered in notes. It looks like a detective crime scene with all the notes that I've got listed up. But ultimately, it ensures that in those moments where my mind goes blank or I think, oh, what should I say? I can look up and then I can instantly think, oh, this is the answer I could give. Or what was that quantifiable amount? Oh, it's this amount. But I also think actually sometimes just writing down all the possible answers to give actually helps cement it in your mind anyway. So you might not need to look up so much because you've written it down and it's already in your mind. Now, the other tip I'd share is to practice your interview out loud. So I would practice in front of a mirror, and that way you can kind of hear how you would answer a question. You can see kind of how you're delivering an answer. And you might mean that you then go about adjusting it because of how you'd go about delivering it. Now, look, I know it'll feel ridiculous talking to a mirror, but it works. But I will also say that your household will think you are quite weird, which my household do often think I am. But ultimately, it's well worth doing because I think it can really make a good positive impact when it comes to your delivery. So let's imagine you've gone for your interview, and after the interview, what do you then do? Well, look, if you want to stand out from the crowd, this is what I would encourage doing because I'd say 95% of candidates don't do this. Within 24 hours, I would encourage you to send a thank you email. This makes a really positive impact. It keeps you on the top of their minds. It reminds them of who you are, but it can also give you a chance to address any concerns. This year, I had two candidates who went for their final interviews with a charity, and it was really close between them. I mean, they're both very appointable candidates. However, one of the candidates went home and they were reflecting on one of the answers they gave, and they weren't quite happy with it. And so they did a little bit of research, and they decided to email the charity to say, look, thank you so much for interviewing me. Really enjoyed meeting you, really interested in the role. On reflection, this is what I would have liked to have answered for this particular question. This is what I would do in that particular situation that you asked me about. With that email, it really impressed the charity so much that it was actually the deciding factor in them, and they gave the person that job because of that email. Ultimately, well, that was the thing that tipped it. I mean, ultimately, with the email, keep it short, keep it punchy, just highlight that key discussion point and restate your enthusiasm. Keep it all professional, but it's well worth doing. And then we've got the waiting game. I mean, after your interview, a charity will hopefully make it clear as to when they will get back to you. And I would encourage you to wait until that date. Please don't chase them before that time, because if you chase them before that time, it kind of gives the impression you're impatient and might, chances are it won't reflect positively for you. But if a charity hasn't given you a time frame to contact them, then I would say contact them after 7 days, after a week, and then ask them for an update and obviously keep it very professional. So let's imagine you've done all of that, you've had your interview, and you then get that phone call. Congratulations, you've been offered the job role. Amazing, exciting, time to celebrate. They want you to be a part of the charity. Now, please remember, again, that it's always two-way. You've got to make sure that the offer is right for you. Yes, it's great that they picked you, but they should also be grateful that you picked them as a charity. Remember that. Is this job offer right for you? And so with all of that, chances are for a lot of charities, they will have salary brackets as to what they're going to be offering. Now, a good charity will base their offer on your skills and experience. However, some charities may go straight in at the bottom end, even if you've got really good experience. And so I just want to encourage you that you are able to negotiate. really in the charity sector, you can negotiate your salary. So even if it feels awkward, then if the salary offer isn't right for you, tell them. Tell them what you're looking for and tell them why you feel that your experience is worth however amount that you are asking for. Because ultimately, if they really want you, then they will be open to negotiate with you. But also do spend some time praying about it. Because the key thing with all of this is, does it feel right? Can you feel that peace from God, that peace that transcends all understanding moment, that this is the right job for you? So, as I mentioned earlier, one of the things that I love to be able to offer all of you is a free CV review if you would like that. And this is where I'll very much look at it from that charity sector perspective, and I'm very happy to offer some actionable feedback, and I'll get feedback to you within 5 working days. And so, if that's something that's interest to you, then please do email me. My email address there, nick@charismarecruitment.co.uk. In addition to that, if you wanted to, we are very happy to add you to our Charisma database. That way we can reach out to you as and when we have relevant roles. And obviously, it would only be as and when we have relevant roles. We don't just send you all sorts of random roles because we're not that type of recruiter. But ultimately, if that's something that's interest, then yeah, please let me know in that email. And then the other thing as well is it'd be great to connect with you on LinkedIn. I'm very, very active on LinkedIn. I think a few names here I recognise, and I know I'm already connected with you. And ultimately, one of the things I do is every weekday at 8:30, I share a post with some charity sector recruitment tips or some thoughts or some reflections or occasionally some rants. But ultimately, yeah, there to try and support and help people any way that I can. So it'd be great to connect with you. And obviously, we've got the charisma recruitment.co.uk website there with our job page as well. Yeah, so with that all being the case, I think we've got some time for a Q&A. So I'll stop sharing my screen. And if you've got any questions, please do ask. And it's one of those things as well. I realize if you're thinking something, I think, oh, should I ask this or not? Chances are other people are going to be thinking that too. So honestly, there's no stupid question. So ask anything that you'd like to ask.
We have a question here. It's in the chat, so I'll call it out. And this is from Chris. So
Yeah.
thanks, Chris. Alongside a main job, let's say 4 days a week, we have a lot of side hustles. Puts finger to side of mouth. Some smaller jobs, maybe consultancy work, or just a few days' work here and there. Is it worth including these in a CV? And if so, how many exactly?
Yeah, no, really, really good question that. So thank you, Chris. And I think it's one of those things where coming back to the CV, ultimately you want to keep it up to 2 pages ideally. You don't want to put lots and lots and lots of things on there. So I suppose when it comes to breaking up, there's a couple of things I'd first of all suggest doing. So ultimately, if you've got quite a long career history, anything that's before 2015, don't put details about it, just put the job title, organization and the dates, and only include a relevant detail if it's specific to the job that you're applying for. And then hopefully within that, it would then enable you to be able to include the different side hustles or the small jobs that you do or the consultancy work. I think it's one of those things where if it's relevant to the job that you're applying for, obviously include more details on it. If it's not, literally just say what it is and limit it at that, because again, I appreciate there's limitations of space when it comes to a CV.
Got it. Thanks, Chris, for that. Another question from John. On thank you notes, if you're applying through a recruiter and do not have access to the interviewer's email address, how do you recommend navigating sending thank you notes? Should you go through the recruiter, track down an email address? What's it? Find out where they live, stalk them up? No, I just got to say, yeah,
Yeah,
how should you get in
no,
contact?
brilliant question, John. Yeah, no, really like that. So, yeah, I'd say go through the recruiter. So, for example, for us at Charisma, when candidates do then send us an email afterwards, say we then pass that on to the charity so they can see that. And you can specifically ask if you're going through other recruitment consultancies, specifically ask them, would you do this for me? And I would hope most would. So, yeah, well worth asking the questions to do that. In terms of tracking down emails, I mean, yeah, I'd probably avoid doing that because I suppose you don't want to become too stalkerish. And sometimes I think charities they want to go through a recruitment consultancy just to keep a bit of distance there and that side of things. But ultimately, through that recruitment process, actually, if that charity is directly emailed you anyway, which will sometimes happen, then obviously you can just reply straight to that if that's if you got that there and you've already had that previous interaction.
Got it. Okay, great. Um, Question for you, Nick. You're obviously seeing the rise of AI in the recruitment space,
Yeah.
and with some advantages and disadvantages, right? So application bots seem to be more than they're very present, shall we say. And
Yes.
I think lots of folks, as we look for applications from jobs, we see hundreds of applications. Lots of those can be bots. I'm hearing lots of
Yeah.
feedback from people that are actively in the job search sphere, not just for
Mm.
charities, but everywhere. But I think it's still apparent. Uh, how can we look to navigate that? Because it feels like that's really kind of against the individual. I know we're all trying to get an algorithmic advantage, but that feels something that it's becoming harder to cut through and get through in that particular state.
Yeah, no, brilliant question. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, there are, yeah, AI and bots. It is a problem, and I think that's the case for all sectors there. And I think it's the thing where, let's say, for example, with LinkedIn, a job will go live on LinkedIn, and you might see 100 applications for that particular job. Don't let that put you off because the chance are is so many of them will be bots, and also so many of them won't be relevant because actually, even if it isn't a bot, it's people just clicking one click apply, and actually they got no skills to that particular role. That especially for charity sector roles, really, when you unpack it all and you go through all of that kind of fluff and the AI side of things, you then realize there's only about 3 or 4 decent applications in there. So there is certainly that aspect there. I think the other way to kind of um, get noticed and that side of things as well is ultimately with your application, go through the usual kind of application process, whether it's applying for a particular website or whatever it may be. But what you could also do is follow it up with an email. Again, one of those things with that is it just shows that enthusiasm over it all. It obviously makes it clear that you're not a bot as well, which is really, really helpful. But ultimately, I think it very much varies on the website. And so there are some job platforms which are worse for it than others. And ultimately, if you can go straight through the charity or straight through the recruitment consultancy, do that. And that's will hopefully filter out any other bots in that process. And I think there's something I'll just say on the AI side of things as well. And that is a lot of supporting statements. We can see quite quickly if they're done by ChatGPT. There's lots of the same phrases that are used. Dynamic is one that is often used, and we see straight away, oh, that person's dynamic. Did ChatGPT write that? And all sorts of other phrases and things. So ultimately, you know, AI is a wonderful tool. I use AI a lot, but ultimately it's that thing of how do you use it, and it's kind of working with AI rather than getting AI to do everything for you. So it's just yeah, try and think smart that way in terms of how effectively you use it, and don't let AI do everything for you.
Got it. Okay, thanks for that. Question from Kevin. Do charities acknowledge senior leadership skills gained in the corporate world as transferable into Christian leadership roles? I'd like to hope so, but I'll let you answer that one, Nick.
The honest answer is it depends on the charity. Some absolutely, and actually, I mean, I work with some amazing charity leaders, and they've had very colourful careers. A lot of them from the private sector, doing all sorts of different roles, and then they've fallen into the charity leadership roles, and that's always encouraging. Others can be closed, and so it's the real tough dynamic within that. And I think it's that thing where actually this is where if you've got charity sector experience in other backgrounds from the volunteering perspective or from being a trustee, that's definitely going to be in your advantage if you're trying to then transition into a leadership role, because it's that thing where working in the charity sector, it is really tough. You've got limited resources. It's going to have many ups and downs. There's so much pressure. There can be so much pressure on you when with limited resources, you want to do so much, but there's only so much you can do. And so it's actually, they want to make sure they find people who have got that right understanding over it all. So I appreciate it's not a clear-cut black and white answer because it does depend on the charity. But my encouragement with it all is if you've got experience from volunteering side of things, well worth sharing about.
That's amazing. Any more questions, anybody? Um, doesn't appear to be. So I think we'll wrap that up here so we finish on time. Nick, bravo. Thank you so much for that. I believe you're going to link your slides in the show notes so people can access them, which is great.
Absolutely. Yep.
And they'll be able to find you, and it's obviously on the end slide. So we'll make sure people can get in touch with you and find you and stuff like that. And look, everybody who's watching, who's here now, who's watching back on YouTube, look, just keep going, right? Because these
Yeah.
charities need you. So yeah, please keep going, and hopefully this is positive encouragement today. So thanks for joining this webinar. Remember, if you're watching back on YouTube, like, subscribe, comment. Let's get this message heard. And let's get more people picking up on the tips and tactics that Nick has kindly shared today, because there's so much there that can be really helpful. So thanks everybody, and we'll speak to you soon.